Hello and welcome to the Engineering Co-op session as part of the March virtual open house. Please submit questions using the Q&A tab on the right side of your screen, or you can email enginfo@uwaterloo.ca for answers to specific additional questions not addressed today. So I wanted to start off by reading through the University of Waterloo Territorial Acknowledgement. The University of Waterloo acknowledges that much of our work takes place on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our main campus is situated on the Haldeman Tract, the land promised to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. Our active work towards reconciliation takes place across our campuses through research, learning, teaching, and community building, and is centralized within our Office of Indigenous Relations. You can visit nativeland.ca to learn more about the land you occupy. So my name is Eva Escuza and my pronouns are she, her, and I am the Faculty Relations Manager for Engineering. And I wanted to welcome you all today. The University of Waterloo was founded in 1957. All the students at that time studied engineering. All those engineering students participated in cooperative education. Waterloo's network of 7,100 co-op employers is the largest of any university in North America. Co-op is meant to replicate the real world of work search, so it definitely takes effort and dedication, but it can be of significant benefit to your education and career journey. It lets you explore different career opportunities, gain practical hands-on experience, develop important work and employment seeking skills, acquire professional contacts and build your reputation, get a competitive advantage upon graduation, and of course, finance your education. Engineering co-op at UWaterloo is unique. It's mandatory to complete 5 out of 6 co-op terms to graduate. Out of that, you can gain 2 years of work experience. Average earnings in Canada are $8,400 to $21,000 per term. Some programs will have 8-month co-op work terms, but most are 4-month work terms. Over 1,500 international co-op placements each year. A top 5 school for Silicon Valley internships as well. This is what's unique about engineering at the University of Waterloo. When we look at streams and sequences, you will see that there are both study terms and work terms. The term before your work term, you will of course be studying, but this is also called the recruitment term because you are actively in the process of recruiting or searching for a job while also studying. For the 4 stream students, your recruitment term takes place in fall. For the 8 streams, your recruitment term takes place in the winter. During the recruitment term, all engineering students also have a series of online co-op preparation modules called CFE, or Co-op Fundamentals for Engineering, that must be completed. CFE helps you understand the co-op process. You get a resume review with a senior engineering student from it, and it ensures that you don't have to memorize everything in the slides that we present today. Co-op occurs in 6 cycles that repeat in specific ways throughout the recruitment term. We encourage all of you to take a look at the co-op important dates link provided to get a sense of how this process looks at the present moment. You can see it in chart form or calendar form if you scroll down in the link. This will be like your co-op lifeline and will ensure that you don't miss anything important in co-op moments and deadlines. The co-op process takes place on a system called Waterloo Works. Jobs are posted there, interviews are primarily arranged through there, and rank match takes place there as well. But students often ask if they can find jobs on their own and have them approved for co-op. Yes, you can do that, but you will need to connect with your co-op advisor to confirm the details. As you can see in this slide, there are many different careers you can jump into after you graduate. If at any point you are unsure about your direction, which is totally okay and normal, you can connect with a career advisor to help you figure out your career path options. The Center for Career Action, or CCA, is available to support you through your co-op journey and beyond, even after you graduate. You will have access to your very own co-op advisors that will be available to answer any co-op and career-related questions from the moment you are a UWaterloo student. You can access their services by going to the live chat or sending a message to them in Waterloo Works. Replies take place during business hours, but they're usually very quick. Next, we're going to have 3 wonderful students that will share their experiences with co-op engineering at Waterloo.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Drasti Mehta, and I'm a third-year computer engineering student at the University of Waterloo. Currently, I work at Arctic Wolf Networks for my 4th co-op term as a software developer. So for my co-op experiences, I started my co-op experience at Economical Insurance as a software developer on their IT service management team. My next co-op term was at Seismic Software, where I worked as a full-stack software developer on their Seismic Live social team. My third co-op term was at OpenText Corporation, where I worked as a back-end software developer on their core share team web scale team. And my fourth and current co-op term is at Arctic Wolf Networks, where I work as a security developer on their endpoint detection team. And in my future, I aspire to be either a staff or senior software developer. And my top tip for landing a co-op job is to try to ask questions that will connect you with your interviewer. So these questions could be like, what do you enjoy the most about your job and what led you to work at this company? I really enjoy these questions because they kind of show how you have some sort of connection with the company, and it also helps show your interest in the company as well. And it can also give you some great insight from the perspective of your interviewer as well. What I loved about my co-op term experiences, I loved getting experience in some of the different types of software related jobs. All of my previous co-op terms, I've worked in the IT service management, full stack backend, and security side. So having all of these experiences really helped show what types of software related jobs I enjoy, which can really benefit me for my future and what jobs I want to do after I graduate. I also love being given the opportunity to make meaningful and impactful contributions, because at the end of the day, all the work that you do feels very fulfilling, and knowing that all of your contributions are working towards like a big picture can be really great and fulfilling for you. And it's also cool to see your contributions in production as an end user. And finally, I love learning from amazing people, whether this be my teammates or my managers or other co-op students. I really enjoy learning from their experiences and learning from what they have taught me, as this can really help widen my skill set and just overall enhance my co-op term experience. So thank you for listening, and I'll pass it on to Jose for his co-op term experience.
Thank you very much, Strasti. That's very kind of you. Hi, everyone. My name is Jose Cornel Salazar. My pronouns are he, him, and I am in my last term, 4B of geological engineering. Right now, I'm currently in my study term, but my most recent co-op term was at BGC as a junior geological engineer in their Vancouver office. So I've, since I'm in my last term, I have completed 6 co-op terms, which you need at least 5 to graduate from Waterloo Engineering, but I've done all 6. My very first co-op term actually had very little to do with geological engineering, and it was mainly in IT. So as a project delivery officer, I had the task of essentially scheduling meetings and making sure people were on task and on time. And even though it didn't really have much to do with where my career is now, I felt that it still gave me a lot of one, very good work ethic, working in a very fast-paced area. As well, it gave me kind of like a big picture kind of sense, because it was essentially my first real job. I kind of was able to realize how things work in the real world, which is one of the best things about being able to have these co-op experiences, is just understanding the difference between, what you learn in school versus what you learn out in the real world. So that was my first co-op. And then my second, I was able to do something a bit more related to my career. So I was able to work at a construction company in Burlington, essentially doing a lot of supervision, making sure that, again, people were on task and on time, and helping out with anything that needed to be done, essentially, which was a lot of fun. And I got to be out in the fields, which was one of the things that I kind of looked forward to when I applied to geological engineering. And my third term is where I really started to delve deep into what I really want to do, which is geotechnical engineering. So I essentially got to work outside with a lot of drilling, a lot of soil testing, soil mechanic work, slope stability, things like that. And once I got that experience, I was able to kind of apply it to later terms. So in my fourth, fifth, and sixth term, I was able to do a lot of the stuff that I really wanted to do, which was really exciting. In my fourth term, I got to work for the TTC in Toronto, essentially helping plan out geotechnical testing that would be done for potentially new subway lines. In my fifth term, I got to work in Brampton as an environmental scientist, essentially doing a lot of groundwater modeling, groundwater testing, also being out in the field a lot, which was great. And my most recent and definitely most memorable work term was at BGC in their Vancouver office as a junior geological engineer. And that is where I got to do a lot of a lot of what I definitely see myself doing now in the future. And that's essentially doing a lot of geohazard mitigation work and risk analysis, kind of like a mix between office and field work, which is definitely right down my alley. So I hope to be able to do something like that in the future. So yeah, as I mentioned, that is my career aspiration. And I will say a top tip for landing a co-op. I always tell, even my own little sister, I always tell her this: don't be afraid to put things in your interview, in your resume, or even talk about them in your interview that kind of are unique and don't necessarily have much to do with what the interview has to do with. I know a lot of times in past interviews, I've been asked about different extracurricular activities that have nothing to do with the job, and they just kind of caught the attention of the interviewer, and they're like, oh, that's really cool. So what did you do here? Or like, did you like this? Or like, oh, I have a son that's really interested in that. So things of that nature, you never know. So definitely put things that kind of stand out, that are unique about you, and that usually will catch the attention of your interviewer, hopefully. So some of the things that I really loved about my co-op experiences, one of the things that I mentioned before was that having done all six co-ops, or having had the opportunity to do all six co-ops, was amazing, because it made me realize that what I wanted to do was I was essentially along the right path. So in my past terms, I would try, sometimes I would try a little bit something different. In my first term, for example, I was in project management. In my second term, I did more site supervision work. And in each one of those terms, I ended up learning a bit more about myself, and I learned a bit more about what I wanted to do and where I saw myself working once I graduated. And by the time I got to my sixth term, I was essentially pretty sure about what I wanted to do. So that was great. Another thing is the fact that I was able to travel and work outside in really cool remote areas in Canada, places that I would have a couple of years ago, I never would have thought I would be able to be or see, which I guess brings the context of the picture that I have there. So the picture of that black bear that's there, I took it while driving to a site in northern Alberta. And just stuff like that. Sometimes you just think back and it's like, wow, like imagine if I wasn't able to have this experience, like life would just be so different. So I'm super grateful for being able to go to places like that and see really cool things like that. And one thing too is that even since you only have six co-ops, right? You're there for 4 months. There's definitely a chance that you might end up landing a co-op that by the end of your term, you might realize, maybe I don't really like it too much. But that's totally okay, because it happens to almost everyone. I know it's happened to me, to my friends as well. And I would say that even if you might not like it at the time, you still will end up finishing those 4 months a totally different person with new skills that you can apply to your next co-ops, or even, in my case, once I graduate. So even if there are co-ops that you might not like, stay strong, because even some minor skill or some exposure to some project, might make the difference when you go to another co-op. So it's always good to take in as much as you can, learn as much as you can, and apply it on and move forward. And yeah, thank you very much for listening to my co-op experiences. And now I will give Rachel the floor. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jose. So my name's Rachel Prebos. My pronouns are she, her. And I'm in between my 3B and 4A term of management engineering, which gives me into, I'm about on my 5th co-op term. So right now I'm working as a procurement analyst at HelloFresh. So I've had 4 co-op terms previous to that. Luckily, my first 2 terms got to be before the pandemic started, so I was actually in person. So I started as a business analyst at Highline Mushrooms. I actually got this job on my own outside of Waterloo Works. So Eva mentioned that opportunity, and I was able to work on that and get this job outside of Waterloo Works. For this job, I was mainly working on a project where the business was implementing a system that regulated business affairs, such as like inventory management, financial affairs, and process tracking as well. So a lot of what I was doing was collecting information and getting it ready to go into the new system. So I had the opportunity to travel across all their mushroom farms in Canada and visit all the different farms and production plants to really get all the information, and met a lot of really cool people. My second term, I went on to be the materials coordinator at FGF Brands. You would definitely know, you may not know FGF Brands by the name, but you have definitely eaten their food. They make all the muffins for private labels in Loblaws and Sobeys grocery stores. They also make the Stonefire Naan you would find at Costco, and they make a bunch of the baked goods for Starbucks as well. So I was working as a materials coordinator at FGF Brands. For that, I was working on inventory management and a little bit of management of different accounts they had with suppliers as well. And then on to my third term. So this term I was doing remote at Loblaws. I was a data engineering analyst. So I was working on their data governance team, which is basically for a company as large as Loblaw, there is a huge need to have very clean, very organized data. So in order to do this, a data governance team that really puts in place those rules and sets up a data glossary for the enterprise was essentially the whole source of the information that was needed for Loblaw. So I was working on that team, helping them build up their data glossary, which was essentially a way for everyone in the business to go in and find out what a term meant in a different section of the company, as well as looking at the data flow and which systems they went through. So it was super helpful for everyone in the company. And then my last 2 terms have both been at HelloFresh. So I returned to HelloFresh for this term, and it has absolutely been my favorite terms so far. I definitely found my niche and what I really liked at HelloFresh. So the first term I worked as a supply chain coordinator. So I was actually coordinating the national supply chain in Canada for their packaging materials for the HelloFresh boxes. So the boxes, the cardboard liners inside, the kit bags that the food comes in, and all the other different packaging components. So I was buying things from suppliers, as well as managing our inventory levels, both on site at our distribution centers and at our third-party warehouses. Basically, each week at HelloFresh is completely new with a completely new product with all the different ingredients. So it's super fast-paced and super interesting to work with that. And it's such a fast-growing company with a whole lot of business that was taken up during the pandemic as well. So I really enjoyed it so much enough to come back for this term. This term I'm working more on the analyst side as a procurement analyst, so still within the same team. So some of the projects I'm working on this term are looking at our space in our different distribution centers and how we can reduce our inventory at third-party warehouses in order to have more product on site so that there's less need for movement between third-party warehouses and our own DCs, as well as looking at reconciling inventory at between our third-party warehouses and our DCs and what we have in our systems, so that the buyers that are buying the ingredients and everything have accurate data on how to buy it, so we're not over ordering or under ordering and limiting waste as much as possible. So from my whole experience of these 5 terms so far, I have definitely come to learn that procurement and supply chain coordinations and working in operations is definitely where I want to go in the future and working high up and really looking at the overall planning and strategic side, as well as the day-to-day work of managing a supply chain. In terms of landing a co-op job, the best tip I can offer is make sure to really show your passion for whatever the job, business, and the company. Employers really want to see that you care about what you're doing. So really showing how you're excited and you really find things interesting, telling stories about how you became interested in a certain topic, and just really making it clear that you are working in this field because you really enjoy it. And also, it's really important, get your resume critiqued as much as possible. There are so many, even if not everyone's advice is helpful, you'll always get some piece of advice from someone for your resume to improve it every time. This is my 5th co-op term, and I still get my resume critiqued every term and do a complete review of what I have in order to make sure I have the best resume that I can at that time. So a little bit about what I've loved about my co-op experiences. So I started off as an analyst, not quite in the supply chain area, but I had so many different conversations with different people in different departments and in their logistics departments that really started to pique my interest about supply chain. And by the time I had finished my term at Loblaw, I kind of went that different role into very much more of a data analyst and working with data governance that was a bit more removed from the day-to-day operations of the business. And doing that, I really found that I love learning about how the business works in the day-to-day operations, and supply chain is basically the heart and soul of the company. So finding the path to get to that was really what I've enjoyed. And even the things that I didn't necessarily like were still super valuable. So it teaches you what to look for in the future, not only with what you're doing in the job, but company culture is also a big part of it as well. So learning what kind of environment you want to work in, something that's maybe more corporate or maybe a little bit more laid back. Everybody's different. So finding out what you are comfortable with and the kind of people and environment you want to work in is just as important as the job itself and what you would be doing day to day. And lastly, probably the best thing is just being given these high levels of responsibility and being challenged by my employers to do that. And HelloFresh has done that for me the best by far, especially giving me the opportunity to manage the supply chain for their packaging, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a week. It was really a shock to, like, as a co-op student, to be given that responsibility. But it was an amazing experience, and I learned so much with that role, and having the trust of your employers to really push yourself and go far and make a big impact on what things are happening in the company was an awesome thing.
So because we have a little bit of time left, and just before we wrap up, I would love to ask our 3 panelists, Drasti, Jose, and Rachel, a few burning questions. So Jose, I know you had a variety of work terms. I was wondering, what resources have you utilized for getting support with co-op during your 6 work terms?
So one of the resources that I definitely used a lot was for so NSOC. They run a couple of mock interviews, or sometimes they would run a couple of resume critiques, which I would use a lot, because again, with co-ops, it was my first time working at like a real world job. So I had very little experience with any actual resumes, or how to write resumes, how to what to write, what to say during interviews, how to act professionally during interviews, things like that. So going to those events definitely helped me a lot. And I feel that once you get that confidence, and once you kind of understand what you need to look out for, then it just gets easier from there, in my opinion. So I definitely use those support systems a lot throughout most of my undergrad, for sure.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And it's true. The more you do your resume, the more you get to go to interviews, the easier it gets every time, right? So
Exactly.
perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Drasti, what is the most important skill or lesson that you learned from your co-op experiences? So
the most important skill that I've learned from my co-op experiences, I would probably have to say is adaptability, because especially with like during the pandemic, everything was remote. So not only that was something new for me and like a lot of other students, but just each co-op term really brings something new each time. And it can be either like a new code base, a new technology stack, and new products and new team members, and like a whole new like culture and environment. So I would say trying to be adaptable is a great skill that I learned during my co-op terms, because now I've noticed as I've continued to do more and more co-op terms that were mostly remote, I am starting to see that I'm able to get caught up to speed on a lot of great things, and I'm able to make lots of more meaningful contributions much faster since I have the skill of adaptability. So trying to strengthen your adaptability skill is probably one of the most important things in my opinion, as like overall you'll just be able to help out much more quicker and be a great member of the team that way.
Thanks, Drasti. Amazing advice, and I couldn't agree more. Pandemic or not, adaptability and being flexible is so, so important, because as you shared, we're switching co-op terms, we're going to new people, new employers, new experiences. Thank you. Okay, and Rachel, I have one last question for you. What advice would you pass along to our future students that will be pursuing co-op placements beginning in first year university?
Of course. So I think the best advice that I can give for a first year student is being open to so many different opportunities. It doesn't have to be exactly what you think you need to be doing as a co-op student. Like I started a lot in analytics and found that my passion was more supply chain and management there, with also, I did still love the data part of that as well. But trying something a bit out of your comfort zone is really what co-op is for. It's why you have 6 terms. So if you don't get what you think what you're looking for right away, it's not a big deal. You have so many more co-op terms along the way in order to really get a feel of so many different opportunities in so many different areas, businesses, industries, different job titles. So definitely just being open to all the different opportunities and co-ops that your program sets you up for, and don't try to narrow yourself too quickly, because you can find out that something you never thought of before is what you're truly interested in.
Wise, wise words. I agree. I say co-op is a lot like a test drive, I guess you could call it, because you get to experiment with different places, different employers, different settings, and that's what it's all about. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Drasti, Jose, and Rachel. I always love hearing about the amazing variety of experiences and skills students get to access during their work terms. Really, really inspiring. Thank you so much for joining us and for listening. Feel free to direct any questions to the options that you see here in the slide. So it could be a chat, it could be an email to admissions questions. And so there's a few options for you there. And then here are some other ways to connect with Waterloo Engineering. So lots of ways to get in touch. We hope this presentation has gotten you really interested and excited about engineering at UWaterloo.